guys, so welcome to Jen's World About Art, and today we are going to do a watercolour sketch of water lilies. So I'm just going to start by adding the outside shape of the lily itself. I'm not going to go into too much detail yet. I'm just going to draw a rounded shape. I might have to take it back a little bit this way. You can adjust as you go, and I can erase things and move things. There's a leaf there, or petal, and there's petals coming down and around here, and they're sort of, I don't know, half a triangle shape. They're a triangle shape, a rounded triangle shape. So I'm just going to add those around the outside edge, and I'm going to add another little layer of them around the outside, because when these flowers are opened, they are quite lovely and they spread out like a starburst. They're quite beautiful. So I'm just going to add a few layers into the middle. Then in the very middle of the flower is all the stamen, which are the little yellow, these little yellow centres that are what the bees and bugs and everything get the pollen from, to help pollinate all the other lilies, so we keep getting beautiful flowers. So I'm just going to draw those in. I'm going to try and add a little bit of water to the background as well, and leaves, because lilies sit on lily pads, which are quite lovely. So I'm just going to add a leaf in, or the top of a leaf in down here, because their leaves are round, or their leaves are round. So I'll add that into there, and they literally go out in a pattern like that. And I'll do the shadows of these petals onto here, so that'll just be a darker green shadow on there. I'll leave just there is going to be water, and I'll pop another lily pad leaf over here, and everywhere around them is going to be water. So, and the water is very dark. It's almost a dark blue grey, because it's on a pond, and the way the light's hitting it, it's a dark blue grey. And I'm going to make this lily, I'm going to do the water first. We'll start with the water first. So I've just drawn in a rough outline, and I've got to add maybe a couple more little petals into the middle there, just to help that. Now, I'm going to grab my brush. I'm going to grab, what am I grabbing? I am going to get my brushes are sitting here, a 10 and a 6 in my silver black velvet. Grab a bit of cloth so I can get rid of any excess water off my brush. And I'm going to use a mixture of my sennelier, schmincke, and also Daniel Smith watercolours today. But I'm going to start with the background, and I'm going to wet the paper. So first of all, I've got clean water. Oh, my brush is dirty. Clean water, doesn't matter because the water's going to be dark anyway. Make sure your brushes are clean, peeps. So clean water, not to worry though, because the water is dark. And I run that around anywhere that's going to be the water. And I cut around the leaves, around the petals, and then I'm going to continue around here, because there's water down there. And anywhere that I put this water, the paint will flow quite freely, because that's what watercolour does best. It will flow anywhere that I've wet, the paint will go. And I'm using hot pressed watercolour paper, Arches. It's my favourite watercolour paper. And it's hot press means it's smooth, because I do a lot of animal portraits and things, and I like to draw on it as well. I paint on it and I draw on it. So now the water, I am going to go in with indigo, because it is a very dark, beautiful water. So I'm going to go in with the dark blue, or it's It's a strong blue. And I'm going to leave little snippets of white of the paper as reflections. And I'm just going to let that do what it does. I'm not going to touch it. I'm just going to let that flow. And I'm going to leave little bits of white of the paper as reflection. And I'm going to take that all around that wet area. I'm going to come right down to that corner. And while the paper's, so it's this is called wet in wet technique. So while the paper's still very wet, the watercolour will flow freely. I try not to go back over myself and where I've painted already. Take that around there. And I can add stronger, I'll add a bit of burnt umber to the shadow areas on that. Now, see these little blobs of excess water? I literally dry my brush, take a cloth, dry my brush, and just pick that up. A good absorbent watercolour brush will pick up all those excess blobs of water so you don't end up with overflow. And I'm going to darken up that top corner while it's still damp and it's quite shadowy under there. So with this blue, I'm going to go back into my indigo and I'm going to add a bit of burnt umber. That'll make a blue-grey. Bit of burnt umber. It's a bluey-greeny grey. And I'm going to take that up into that corner to add. Actually, that didn't go dark enough, so I've got to make it a bit darker. A bit less water, a bit more pigment. Burnt umber. And indigo. And burnt umber. So I'm mixing it up as we speak. You can't really see the palette. I'll pick the palette there. There we go. Move it into the view. So that's the shadow colour. So it's the same. It's got indigo, but I've added burnt umber to help. And I'm just going to take that into the shadow areas in the water to help create the dark intensity. And anywhere that I can see shadows under these leaves and petals, there's a dark shadow there. It's quite dark under the flower. And you want your darkest darks against your lightest lights, and under this lily pad is very dark. This side's dried off a little bit quicker than the other side, but that's fine. And I'm just going to leave the water quite simple. I'm not going to do a whole lot more to it. I'm going to darken right up down this corner because that's all in shadow. And I'm looking at this and I might darken up this as well, just down here. Right, so that is pretty much the water how I want it. I'm happy with that. Don't need to do anything else. So I'm just going to let that dry. And you've got to be careful because while this is still wet, anything you put onto your flowers is going to flow. So I'm going to leave this area. I'm going to work on this part of the flower. So, and I'm sort of tossing up whether to do a pink lily or a yellow lily. But I'm going to do a pink lily because I love pink and we're going to do a pink one. So I'm going to start and I'm just going to use one colour pink and I'll go to my Daniel Smith watercolours for the pink. And I'm going to start with Rose Opera because it's really vibrant, it's really beautiful, and I can do it in thin layers. So I'll start with a very watery mix of Pink Opera, super duper watery. So, and I will add stronger layers as I get to the darker tones. I'll use less water, more pigment. So I literally I'm going to fill in all of the petals and just the petals, trying to stay away from the wet water at the background. And I come around. So super duper watery, super duper simple. I've got to leave these petals because they're too close to the water and the blue. I don't want the pink to run into the blue. So I'm just filling in, as you can see, I'm just filling in any. I could get a hairdryer and do it, but I can't be bothered. I'm just going to do it, let it dry naturally. And I just want to show you in absolute 100% real time how I paint, and this is exactly how I paint. I'm very fast. I'm wet in wet a lot of the time. I'm what you'd call an impression painter, like an impressionist. I'm not photographic. I do loose, sort of simple suggestions of the picture. So it's not exact, it's not 100% lifelike, but it gives you the impression of what I'm trying to show you. So that is the first layer. Now I can actually go, that's dried up a bit here. I'll just stay a little bit away from the edge, just so that that pink doesn't run into the blue on these petals. Just stay a little bit away from the edge. And if you wanted to, you can walk away and let it dry and come back when it's dry. I'm just wanting to film this in one fell swoop and show you that you can do it, because I do a lot of outdoor painting, a lot of nature. So everything I do if I do it outside, my sketches and things, they're very fast, because you've got to be fast, because otherwise the scene changes, the light changes, everything changes, and things move. So you get your picture down quick, and you get your details on quick. So I tend to work wet into wet all the time, and I just work around things. If it's still damp, I'll just work around those areas. So now I'm going to go in the next layer with the pink, and I'm going to start to add the darker areas. And it's lighter to the outside, to the edge, and it's darker a darker tone to the inside. So I'll add a little bit darker to the inside there. Under this petal, it's lighter around the edge, darker to the inside, because that's under that one is shadow. And that one, and each layer I add a little bit less water, a little bit more pigment. So this is just a touch more paint and a little bit less water added to the mix. And this will probably take 3 or so layers. And you see this, because it was so watery to start with, it dried super fast. See how a little bit of blue's running there? I'm not going to worry about that. It's not the end of the world. You can always add a little bit of white acrylic paint to the areas you lose. If you lose the white, it's not the end of the world. You can just add a bit of white pen, bit of Posca pen, bit of acrylic paint, anything you like that's pure white. You can go back over any bits you've wrecked and touched up with the colour that you don't want there. So it's all fixable. None of it's anything to panic about. Okay, so now under here is quite dark, and I might even add, I've got to add a little bit more pinky there, a bit more water, a bit more pink. And I come in and around that edge. And I don't mind leaving, see how I've got the little bit of white around the edge there? I don't mind leaving that a little bit sometimes, because it just adds to the interest of the picture. It shows you the differences. So I'm now going to go a little bit more pink, bit more pink, little bit less water, and I'm going to add a slightly different red. I'm going to add a little bit of violet to that pink, to the opera pink. A little bit of pink, a little bit of opera, a little bit of, what's it called? A little bit of, no, it's crimson. A little bit of crimson, sorry, to the violet, to the pink. A little bit of crimson to the pink, I'll speak. And that will just use that in the undertones, the very darkest shadowy areas. And that while it's still damp, and it'll blend with the pink, just to strengthen up the darkest areas on those petals. And I love watercolour, because watercolour's more suggestion. It doesn't have to be photographic. You can just make people think that what you want there's there. It's very dark up in there, so I'm just going to get a damp brush into the pigment that I've already put on and just drag that up with the water. And there's enough pigment on my brush that I don't have to dip back into the paint. It's darker on that side than it is on this side, so just being careful to leave little edges. Okay, coming back and around there. Now having a look here, so just under that petal there. And under this one, go back over that one a little bit. And you can get these reference photos off Pixabay, unsplash.com. I get a lot of references off those sort of sites. They're really good. They've got a really good range of different pictures that you can work from. And I mainly use Pixabay and Unsplash. And my kids take a lot of photos for me too, which is great. My eldest daughter's a photographer. And she gets me lots and lots of pictures of different things. She loves her nature photography, but she's doing people as well now, which is really cool. Okay, so I'm going to leave that for a second, and now I'm going to go onto the leaves around it. And the leaves are a beautiful, vibrant sort of a green. So I'm going to go sap green to begin with. A watered down sort of sap green. I'll clean out one of these pans so you can, because I don't need to touch the water again, so I can get rid of that pan and that pan. Like that. I'll just clean those out with my bit of toweling. Grab another bit of cloth, because I know I need another bit of cloth to clean my brush. And I'm going to go sap green. Watery sap green, because the background's dry now, and I'm literally just going to blob in that green up to the edges like that. Take it, whoops, and I've got it onto the pink, so I just literally touch that with the cloth and pick that up off the water, off the paper. I can cut right to the edge of the lily pad there. And again, I just take the moisture off my brush and I can pick up that bead of water around the edge. Again, same down here. I'm just going to fill in that lily pad, staying a little bit away from that pink bit there. Get some more sap green, some more water, and I'm just going to run that all the way down the bottom. Wet. So this is wet on dry, so I'm on dry paper. I could have done it wet into wet. I might actually do that now a bit. Just add a bit more water, let the green run down into that, and then go up to the top here. Come around that edge, up the top, cutting around those petals like that. I'm going to cut right into the edge of that lily pad there. There we go. So the leaves are basically filled in. And you can see I've got a bit of a cauliflower pattern on there. Doesn't matter, because I'm going to add more shadow to that anyway. So now I'm going to go back into my sap green, but more paint, less water. Same colour, exactly the same colour. Just more paint, less water. And I'm going to take that into the pattern of the leaf. Anywhere that I see, I want to go darker up into the top where the flower is, right up close. Like that, and I'm going to just throw in a few little lines to suggest the pattern on the leaf. And I've gone over that cauliflower piece that had a bit of a runny bit. And I'm going to do the same. These top ones, I'm going to start heavier, thicker, sap green towards the flower, like that. And then I'm going to take the brush back to the water, clean it, and just going to drag that then out onto the pad. So it gives you the effect of the pattern of the leaf. So again, get some more green. It's exactly the same colour as the original colour, just less water, more pigment. Put the heaviest, thickest, closest to the flower, the petals. So you want your darkest darks against your lightest lights. So do it thickest in the middle, right at the petals. And then clean your brush and drag it out. in the shape of the lily pad, like that. There you go. So now I'm going to go really dark into the shadows here. So I'm going to mix up an olivey green. So I'm going to go a bit of my sap green, keep my sap green because I want to use that as a base because that makes everything unify better. If you use the same colour in amongst what you're doing, it does unify it. So I'm going to use my sap green and I'm going to add a little bit of olive to it, a little bit of olive green. And that'll just darken it up enough. And I'm going to go in right in again, close in to the bottom here. This will be the darkest shadow on this flower, on this of the flower, the flower's shadow, going in the pattern of the leaves, like that. I might even have to go a little bit darker, you know. I'm just looking at that thinking I might have to go a little bit darker. But that's basically the pattern of the petals, the reflection of the petals onto the leaf. I might go a bit darker, so I'm going to add the green and I'm going to add a bit of a dark blue, or like a really dark blue purpley colour into there and see what happens. Yep, okay, so I've got the green and a bit of a purple. And I'm going to add that in there as well. So create a super dark. And I'll take that right underneath. Alright, that's looking better. That's looking a bit better. I won't add it to all of it. I'll take it down onto the shadow bits. Let it blend in a bit. Like that. Let it blend. Alright, I'm happier with that. And then I'm going to go back to my flower now. And I'm going to go back in, because it's all dry around that top edge. I'm going to go back in with my pink. And I'm going to see, because I left little tiny gaps around the edges, I'm going to go back in with my super duper watery pink. And I'm going to take the paint to the edge of these petals that I've left. Not all of it, just some of it. Anywhere that's dry, like that. I might have to add also some darker shadow. I might add a purpley shadow, not quite as strong a purpley shadow, but more like a deep magenta. I'll go a deep magenta to the centre of this flower. I'm just going to pop that deep magenta into here, because that'll be then next to the stamen in the middle. That'll make that yellow pop when the yellow's ready to go on. So anywhere that's going to be the darkest, I'll add this magenta. So into the edges and the corners where the petals sort of join. Anywhere that's in shadow, like that. Come around this side, probably a bit of magenta there, coming up to the inside of that flower petal, inside of that petal. Inside of that petal. Alright. And I'm going to add a bit more of that purpley tone. Purple to that green just in here, because you see that's dried back a bit lighter. I want it to stay a little bit darker than it is. I want a little bit more contrast, so I'll add that a little bit darker. Just add another layer of that purple with the green, like that. And I can wet my brush. This is called re-wetting, so I can wet my brush and just soften those shadowy edges and drag them down. That's a clean wet brush. I can just move the paint that's already on the paper to where I want it and soften any hard edges like that. And now I'm going to get to the middle flowers, and I'm going to use the brightest yellow, or use orange and yellow, but I'll use yellow first. Go yellow first, so I'm going to use my Hansa yellow. in my Daniel Smiths. So get that Hancy yellow, and I'm just going to go on to where the stamen are in the centre of the flower and mark those in like that. So anywhere that I want that yellow, I'm just going to pop that yellow like that. I'll add a little bit of contrast with some orange when that dries. And I might even go a bit more indigo around the edge of this flower while I'm letting the yellow dry. I'm going to go a little bit more indigo just into this part under the darkest part of the reflections on the water, like that. Just get a little bit more contrast into the shadows like that, because that's deep under that shadowy leaf, under there, and also under that leaf. And I'm just going to do it in like almost like the ripples of the water. And I'll come down here as well, do it down here. Like that. I won't worry about the top because the top is more in the distance. I might do just a couple of lines. Just a couple of lines like that. Just so it has that watery effect. I'm quite happy with that. Alright, so that's still a bit too damp, so I'm just going to drop in my brush, pick up that excess pigment. So I've cleaned it, and I literally just pick that up. So there's no blobs of paint in there. And I can actually go back in now and add a little bit of orange just to help create a little bit of shadow on those. So they're not just one colour. So I'll go a little bit of orange. And you can, just a bit of red, bit of yellow makes orange. There we go. So I'm going to add a little bit of orange just for contrast onto those stamen into the middle. Or into the middle. And you can see my paper's rippled a little bit, but that's because it's smooth watercolour paper. But I think that is just about done for a watercolour sketch of lilies. I think that is just about done. So what I'm going to do now, so I'm just going to take the edges off because this is like the framing of the picture. You take your edges off very carefully and it gives you a beautiful crisp line. And voila! There we have it. Our little simple loose lily painting. And I hope you've enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all next video. Have an awesome day. Okie doke. Bye.